Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode of the Movie Crusaders Chat About. My name is Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we are doing an episode that I've been wanting to do since I started this channel, because this particular topic has been something that pretty much through my whole, I want to say movie life, meaning like when I actually started paying attention to movies, was something that always, I don't want to say it bugged me, but I always took super notice of it and was like, how does this happen? Why does this happen? And did they not converse about this before doing it? It's kind of like when you and your best friend go to school and you guys are both wearing the same thing. We're like, what, dude? We got to discuss this. we look like douchebags. Like, stop. But we're talking about, I don't know what term we want to use. I've heard sister movies. I've heard twin movies. The problem is, if you say that to somebody, they think you're talking about actual twins or actual sisters. But that is what the term is called, is sister movies / twin movies. Brian, what describe what that really is for people who don't know what that term is.
Basically, when people refer to these twin movies, it's basically two movies or more that come out like relatively the same time, like usually within a year to year and a half, that are basically almost the same, or at least easily confused. They're either about the same person, they're the same specific subject. They just look and sound very similar. Now, some are, more different than others, but you'll see when we go through our list, there's a wide variety of these things where sometimes it's clearly just a coincidence. Sometimes it was like an anniversary or a reason movies are being made about a certain subject. Sometimes it's, like public interest in a certain subject at a time, but it happens a lot more than you would think.
Yeah, there are two instances this year right now that are going on. One is Pinocchio, which we just had the Disney not re-release, but the Disney live action adaptation of Pinocchio that just came out last week, which I personally have still not watched yet because I heard it was really bad. And you haven't watched it yet either?
No plans to.
I'll watch it at some point, but I'm just not. I was not a big Pinocchio fan when I was a kid, so wanting to watch the live action version of it, if it didn't have Tom Hanks, I would literally have no purpose in wanting to see it.
Right.
But then Guillermo del Toro has his own version of Pinocchio coming out is it the end of the year on Netflix?
That one is coming out November 25th.
Yeah, so both are Pinocchio movies that are coming out. And I think earlier, like a couple years back, there was, when The Jungle Book came out, Andy Serkis directed his own version of Jungle Book called Mowgli. And so same movies, same kind of plot, stuff like that, and just different actors, different directors doing different things. But the problem is usually everyone goes and sees one of these and not the other, or one's really, really good, the other one's really, really shit, or you get the usual weirdness of they're both really good. But the problem is that people usually won't go see both of them. Now, you and I, we're movie people, so we'll see both. But there's a lot of times where people will go, "Oh, that one." I'm like, "Yeah, but I mean this one. Oh, I never heard of that one." Well, it came out the same time.
A lot of people like pick one. They'll see like, well, there's these two movies. Well, I'll go see that one. Now, granted, they do come out at different times, which is why a lot of times like the second one comes out and people be like, oh, I already saw that movie.
Yeah.
Or in the case like we were just talking about, you were talking. I think you're about to talk about this soon. I'll bring it up. The Woman King and Wakanda Forever, Black Panther.
That is definitely something I was going to bring up. That is a movie
coming out this year because it's like they're not the same subject. They aren't the same.
No.
Exact movie, they aren't the same subject, anything like that, but they definitely have a similar look, a similar basic setting to it. So people like you and me, it's fine. We don't get them confused at all. But I have had people who don't go to movies a lot. I can hear them in theater, who see the two previews and think, isn't that the same movie?
Heaven forbid Wonder Woman came out this year as well with the Amazons, and you would have
At least she's white though, if they wouldn't have gotten that.
No, that was like, oh, they're just trying to make a non-white version, and that would have opened up a whole other Pandora's box of other crap. But yeah, that's one big one this year. Like Pinocchio, that's one's Netflix, one's not. But you have two big movie releases that are Oscar potential contenders, because Black Panther was for the first film, so I'm sure Wakanda Forever probably will be too. But you got The Woman King with Viola Davis and this. I shot the review, so you guys can see the review on the channel. This movie right now is my #1 film of the year. It is fantastic. It is beautifully directed. It is beautifully acted. The story's great. The characters are fantastic. Viola Davis is not the only one that I think this should be nominated for Oscars by year's end. There's at least 2 others in this movie that I'm like, these people need to be talked about and elevated. But even when I was in the theater seeing this movie, they put on a trailer for Wakanda Forever. And at first, like I said, I was like, why would you do that? Like, it is too similar. You got women empowerment, women like tribe, basically war groups battling. And there was literally a woman in the theater because it was a small theater. So anyone that talked, we could hear them. After the Wakanda Forever trailer ended, she literally went to her friends and goes, "Isn't this the movie that we're watching?" And I shook my head. I'm like, this is what's going to be problem, because Woman King is out now. Wakanda Forever is in November. And I'm afraid that when Wakanda Forever comes out, everyone's going to know Wakanda Forever because it's Black Panther and it's a comic book movie and all this kind of stuff. That by the time Oscar season hits, they're going to forget about Woman King because A, it came out first, and B, everyone's going to go, well, that's just Wakanda Forever light. And it's like, no, it's not. It's separate. It's different. But releasing it within a 3-month window of Wakanda Forever might cause it to be overshadowed and screwed over in the Oscar running. And I think it's going to make some good money. But
Wakanda Forever money, but
what's that?
Not Wakanda Forever money.
No, because you got the MCU and Disney and all that. But that is a general worry I've got. You and I both agree, we don't consider that a SisterTwin movie because one's a comic book movie based on comic book characters. This is based on true events.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of a similar setting and feel to it. And I totally get putting the trailer on there because, like, hey, if you like this movie, you'll probably like this one too, and that makes sense. But like you said, I think it's the fact that they're so similar. The bigger concern is the overshadowing, like you said.
I think the biggest thing too, wow, I blanked on Black Panther's name.
Chadwick Boseman.
Dave Boseman. If Chadwick Boseman hadn't died, Wakanda Forever would not be what it is. It would be a Black Panther movie and all this kind of stuff. So because the trailer, or at least the trailer that we've seen so far of Wakanda Forever, is
very female centric.
It's very female centric, and it's very much about the I'm blanking on the Okoye's group.
The Dora Milaje?
Yeah, Dora Milaje. And it's very Dora Milaje centric, which is exactly what Woman King is. It's about this woman group that protects their king, much like the Dora Milaje do in Black Panther. The similarities are right there. So it is, in turn, kind of a twin sister movie, even though they're not anywhere remotely close. So, and that's what we're discussing here. And the main thought process, and Brian, you're a little bit better at explaining this than I am. How does this happen? Why does this happen? And it's happened way too much.
There's many times there's not an answer to it. Like I said, sometimes it can be an anniversary. It can be a time of year. Sometimes it can be a person who died or something like that, and more movies come out about them. Sometimes it can be about a current event, like a current trend, like multiple studios try and cash in on the trend by making a movie. A lot of times I think it is just coincidence. I think a lot of times it's a matter of probably a studio heard about a movie and they, hey, we can make that and we'll race to get ours out first. I think that does happen, although not as often as like most of these. I don't think of that case, but I think that does happen. From what I've read and things, I think a lot of times it's like a script gets shopped around town and they're like, no, we don't want that script, but hey, we like that idea, so let's make our own version of that. So it's like there's any number of reasons it can happen, but yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Now, when we went through this long list, and we're gonna breeze through a lot of it, but we're gonna talk a little more about the ones that I think most people recognize. The one thing that we try to keep ourselves in is that, because yes, there are movies that came out and then like maybe 2 years later, 3 years later, there's a movie that comes out that's just like it. We kept it within an 18-month window because that is the only time I feel like 18 months is really like we just saw this movie. Whereas like 2 years and stuff, like after 2 years, like that's usually like sequel time territory. And it's like, it's like a sequel when it's not. So we kind of kept it within a day to 18 months to keep it closer together. So these are the movies that we're discussing that were released within an 18-month window.
Yeah, because also you get longer than that, and some of them aren't necessarily twin movies so much as a reaction to it. Like a studio sees this movie successful, it's like, ooh, we'll make our own version of that.
Yeah,
so we tried not to do those. So that's why you kept within an 18-month.
And there was even one case, I think, on this list that 2 similar movies came out the same day as each other.
There's one, there's one of those, yeah.
But yeah, so what was the? Because like I said, we tried going all the way back as far as, and I mean, obviously, we can only go back so far. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's probably movies in the 50s and the 40s where it's like those are basically the same damn film. But what was the earliest case that you and I basically went, that's one right there?
Offhand, or that we're on our list completely?
Based off our list.
Okay. Yeah, so we went back as far, like I said, these go back as far as they went back to like the 20s and things like that. If you try and look up lists of these things, but we're not familiar with a lot of these movies, and so we can't speak intelligently about them. So we went back as far as 1979, 1980, and that would be Amityville Horror, the original one with James Brolin, and The Shining, which came out just under a year apart at about 10 months.
This to me is almost like a Wakanda Forever Woman King thing, because Amityville, based on a true story, Shining is a book. So this is probably the closest we've got to that kind of similarity. But yeah, I mean, it's in terms of like, why do we consider that a sister movie? It's based on a family going into, well, in Shining it's a hotel, with Amityville it's a house, and you've got the father basically being manipulated by the ghosts in said place, and basically trying to turn him into killing his family. Sound familiar? Well, that's the plot of both movies. Yeah. Thus, the sister twin scenario. And then, of course, what was it? Amityville, which one had the most money? Amityville had the most money? Which is shocking.
Amityville Horror made actually about $40 million more. Yeah.
Which is shocking.
Yeah, which is shocking. Although it also has a much lower Rotten Tomatoes score. So.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead and breeze through the 80s. There's a lot in the 80s, but a lot of people probably didn't know or see any of these films.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll breeze through the 80s. Just stop me if you want to chime in on any of these.
Yeah.
In the early 80s, in like 1981, you had The Howling, American Werewolf in London, and Wolfen all came out. In 1984, just 1 month apart, this is one of those ones cashing in on the trend, was Breakin' and Beat Street. Because
Wolfen literally sounds like a werewolf breakdance movie. I'm just going to say that right now. It's like Electric Boogaloo, Wolfen.
Yeah, there's also, and then of course Breakin' 2 came out within like a year, less than a year later now. But as far as the two that came out a month apart was these two. Here's an interesting one I thought: Iron Eagle and Top Gun. In my mind, Iron Eagle was like the lesser Top Gun knockoff. In doing my research, I realized Iron Eagle came out 4 months before Top Gun. So who knew? Obviously made a lot of money.
But here's the thing. What was the cast of Iron Eagle compared to the cast of Top Gun?
Yeah, it was Jason Gedrick, I think, and Louis Gossett Jr. It's not quite the same. And plus, I don't think we're going to see Iron Eagle Maverick anytime soon. Probably the primary example that people use of this trend came in 1987, 1988. You had Like Father, Like Son. You had Vice Versa. You had 18 Again. And then kind of in that same body swap kind of genre, you have Dream a Little Dream and Big, which technically is not swapping, but it was definitely part of that same trend. Those all came out within about a year of each other. Broadcast News came out in December of 87. In March of 88, you had Switching Channels, which was Christopher Reeve, Burt Reynolds, and Kathleen Turner. Kind of the same thing with the love triangle set upon a broadcast news setting. Dangerous Liaisons and Valmont, both adaptations of the book Dangerous Liaisons, came out in the same year. The other one, which had multiples, in 1989, you had Leviathan was the first one out, then The Abyss, Deep Star 6, and then there were like 2 or 3 like straight to video versions, and they weren't like quick cash-ins because it came out like at the same time. All these underwater sci-fi adventures all came out within a year of each other.
Now this next one here, this is the first one I remember.
You go ahead and take it.
And that is in also 1989, about 90 days apart from each other, 91 to be exact. You have Canine with Jim Belushi and Turner and Hooch with Tom Hanks. Both are cops who have basically dogs that are partnered with them, and the dogs don't listen to the cop, and then they grow into a buddy cop movie friendship. And at the end, don't both dogs get injured?
I honestly don't remember either movie very well.
I'm pretty sure in Canine, the dog gets shot as well, but the dog lives. Whereas in spoiler alert, in Turner Hooch, the dog dies. But both, I'm spoiling a movie that's like 30 plus years old.
I think the statute of limitations is passed.
Turner Hooch, the show came out and it spoiled it already, which shockingly, I actually really liked the Turner Hooch Disney Plus show, and then they canceled it after the first season. I was pretty pissed about that. But that was the first one I remembered as kids. because like I said, 91 days apart. Very, very similar stories, except one was a German Shepherd and the other one was I don't know what you would consider Hooch. Is he a pit, or I don't really know what kind of dog Hooch is. But yeah, but those are like, come on, guys, like that one was 100%. Now this is the one I mentioned earlier, Brian, where they literally came out the same
on March 6th, 1990. You might remember around that time a very, very, very short-lived fad known as the Lambada. On the same day, on March 16th, 1990, you had Lambada and The Forbidden Dance, two movies that are, I have not seen either one, but as far as I can tell, exactly the same movie, put out by two different studios, came out the same day. Now, they both made less than like $5 million total, and they both had a Rotten Tomatoes score of, well, one has 0, one has 23. So I mean, they're completely forgettable, but I had to include on this list just because that was the one where they came out the same day.
What's funny is that because we have this all on a Word doc, every time I see Lambada, and because of the time frame, my brain keeps going La Bamba. I'm like, they made another Ricky Fallon movie? I'm like, no, that's not the same thing. That's Lambada. Like, that's not at all the same thing. And then just like you were saying with like time frame, like like a turn of the time or like a anniversary coming up. The next one here is exactly that. Where it was in 1992, you had Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, and then 1492, Conquest of Paradise. Big shocker what the whole plot of that was, and that was what the it
was the 500th anniversary. Yeah. So you knew they were going to make it. I think it's one of those cases where multiple studios were like, "Hey, this is obviously you do a 500-year thing because it's just the year itself. You know exactly what you're talking about." Usually when that happens, like other ones will fall out of the wayside, or sometimes studios will actually decide to end up combining a project into one main one. But they both decided to cross the finish line, and neither of them did very well.
So. Then we come into the mid, I would say early 90s to the rest of the 90s is let's see how many of these movies we can do.
Because, like 87 to 89, I was just thinking when we were going through the list, I'm like, there's so many of them in that 3-year period. There was like 7 different ideas. But then, the 90s is the worst.
From 93 to, I would say 99, there was almost, I think, there was at least 1 to 3, sometimes 4 of these twin sister movies a year. And a lot of them are relatively popular. Almost both are relatively popular. Started off with and I love both these movies. In 1993, they were almost a year apart, but you had Rookie of the Year and you had Little Big League. Granted, one is about a kid playing in the majors, one is about a kid managing the majors, but both using Major League Baseball teams, not fake teams, both having players in the major leagues in them. I mean, Little Big League had the bigger names with Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson and all them, but you had two kids thrown into the major leagues within a year apart. I know most people probably will give, if you have to choose which one you like better, I think most people are going to say Rookie of the Year. I actually personally love Little Big League better. Because Ken Griffey Jr. is my favorite baseball player of all time, and that was the movie that kind of introduced me to Ken Griffey Jr. But 2, spoiler alert as well, the kid doesn't win at the end of Little Big League. Like, they lose. Whereas, like, in Rookie of the Year, they do the whole, like, end frame of him winning the World Series, which he didn't even pitch in the World Series. So I wonder how the Cubs even won the World Series without him. But what were I know you've watched the Rookie of the Year. Did you watch Little Big League?
Honestly, I don't know if I ever saw Little Big League. And Rookie of the Year, I know I saw, but I honestly remember nothing about it. I was kind of aged out of those kid films at this point. So I'm old.
Yeah. So. Now, Rookie of the Year is like the kid falls and breaks his arm, and his like tendons are so tight that he can throw like a 90-something mile fastball.
So I wonder how many kids now purposely broke their arms hoping that would happen to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wonder how many kids did that, like broke their arms to their hands so they would do fast. Like that's not how bodies work. And Little Big League was this kid like knows the ins and outs of the Minnesota Twins, and his grandfather dies and basically leaves the team to him. And then he has to run them, and then eventually he just basically fires a manager, and then he becomes owner/manager of the team. And yeah, but nonetheless, that was another one that was like everyone talks about those movies being very similar. After that, you had also in 93, you had Hard Target and Surviving the Game, which I maybe have seen Hard Target, but I've never seen Surviving the Game.
Well, yeah, Surviving the Game has got Ice-T, and I don't remember the rest of the cast. I just remember him for sure from it. But they're both based on there's a short story from 1920s called The Most Dangerous Game. There was like an old movie about it, like made in the 30s, things like that. And then it's been done more since then. It's basically about people, basically about hunting people. They in both cases, they take like poor people or homeless people or something, and they send them out. And these guys are hunting people for sport because they're the ultimate game to hunt. It's one of those things where it's like, it's an old short story. It wasn't an anniversary or anything. There's not some big resurgence. The author didn't die or something like that. It's not even a super well-known story. So it's just weird that two versions of it came out in the same year. Surviving the Game, I think I remember it being decent. It was like one of those things that you kind of, nowadays would probably go straight to VOD, something like that. Hard Target, the first American movie by John Woo, which
Hard Target's the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme, right?
Yes, it is. Jean-Claude
Okay,
Van Damme.
yeah.
It's first American movie directed by John Woo, where we first got to see his huge overuse of slow motion. So this 95-minute movie or whatever probably would be about 33 minutes if you played everything in full speed. But yeah, is what it is.
And then next we have one that is everyone loves this one, and then everyone kind of forgets this other one came out, in my opinion. But it's also still really big names, but everyone just talks the hell out of this one for the other one. And that's in also 1993, but also goes into 1994. They're about 182 days apart. You got Tombstone, which to me is my favorite Western of all time. And then you have Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp, both obviously based on Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and all them. But I mean, everyone talks about Tombstone because, come on, it's fucking Tombstone. And then you got Wyatt Earp, which is trying to be more, I guess, it's a lot more, less blockbustery and more kind of like true to like
more Oscar baity, right?
Yeah, Oscar baity. Whereas Tombstone's like, let's have some fun.
Well, that's the thing. This is the first example that we've talked about so far where I think that, because I remember when this happened, Wyatt Earp was actually supposed to come out like November, December that year to qualify for that year's Oscars.
Which would have put them right within week.
But because they're so close, it's one of those things, one of them blinked, and it just turned out to be Wyatt Earp blinked. Now, I think that also had to do with some production delays and things too. But yeah, that one, this is what you'll see a lot as we go farther into the list. Is like one tends to be more popcorn movie and one tends to be more prestige movie. Because, you know, if they both try to go for the same audience or the same style, then they're just going to seem really like copycats. So you did have two different takes in the story. Tombstone, I think, is the like you said, far better remembered movie. I think it is the better movie. Wyatt Earp is quite long, although I do want to give props to Dennis Quaid. Does a great version. He does a great job as Doc Holliday. I mean, as great as Val Kilmer's is, Dennis Quaid gets overshadowed, but he is excellent at it too.
I still to this day have not seen Wyatt Earp.
Honestly, you're not missing anything, but Dennis Quaid deserves some recognition.
Yeah, And then 1994 also, Brian doesn't know this movie even existed, but the kids in the 90s kids,
I just never saw it.
The 90s kids, you guys will know these movies because they came within 175 days apart from each other. You've got Camp Nowhere with Christopher Lloyd and Heavyweights with a young Ben Stiller before anyone really knew who Ben Stiller was. Both obviously Camp Nowhere. It's a bunch of kids that basically make up a summer camp, and then basically get this older guy played by Christopher Lloyd to kind of pretend to run the camp, so they can basically just do whatever the hell they want and have fun for the entire summer and create their own little Camp Nowhere. And then Heavyweights obviously is that camp, and then you have Ben Stiller come in, who's till this day I still think Ben Stiller's performance in Heavyweights is basically the like prequel to Dodgeball, because he's basically playing the same character. Except that, the Dodgeball character got really, really fat, where that's the only part that doesn't make sense. Like, that wouldn't work. But Ben Stiller's performance in Heavyweights is fantastic. But both those camp movies came out within, 175 days of each other. Everyone, I think, remembers Heavyweights more than Camp Nowhere. I think Camp Nowhere is actually really good. Granted, if I watch it now, it's probably like, this is a bad movie. I'm sure Heavyweights is probably considered a bad movie. But kid-wise, I loved Camp Nowhere. And then we had the what we want to call them, the
skydiving action
movies in 94.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously action flicks tend to be, a lot the same. You got the buddy cop movies all kind of tend to blend together, things like that. This is just very weird, very specific. It was these action movies that heavily centered around skydiving.
This is the equivalent of what you said about probably a studio liked the script, didn't want to sign that, so they had someone else write a very similar.
I can't think of another explanation for it. Because you had which one came out first? It looks like Terminal Velocity came out in September of 1994. That stars Charlie Sheen. And then 77 days later in December, you had Wesley Snipes' Drop Zone.
It would have been so hilarious if Emilio Estevez was Drop Zone.
That
That would be perfect.
I saw both these movies. Couldn't tell you anything about these movies. I think they are both like fine. I didn't hate either of them. They aren't classics. The one thing I will say is notable about Drop Zone is if you listen to the score for Drop Zone, you will hear the scores for Gladiator and Pirates of the Caribbean because Hans Zimmer likes to reuse his scores.
I maybe saw Terminal Velocity. I've never seen Drop Zone. And then you've got in 95, you got was it Celtic or is it Irish? Scottish, sorry. You got the Scottish War with Rob Roy and Braveheart, which I still to this day have not seen either one of these films.
And this is one I think falls into, now granted, Wakanda Forever is fictional, but I think it falls in the same category as like that Woman King and Wakanda Forever. I almost said Wanda Forever.
That's a sequel to one of it.
Whereas these two stories have nothing to do with each other, but they're both set in Scotland. They're both kind of this war, this revolutionary, like fighting against whoever it is, the English and things like that. So they're just
Oscar baity.
And so the same kind of thing where I think people went to theaters and like, wait, are those the same movie I'm seeing trailers for? And it's one of those kind of things. And obviously Braveheart fared much better, both financially and as far as awards, things like that. I have never seen Rob Roy, although I've heard it is quite good.
Yeah, I've never seen Rob Roy either. I still haven't seen Braveheart because I heard how long it was. I was like, I really don't care to watch that movie. I know the gist of it. I know how it ends. I've seen the big scene. Like, I don't need to watch the rest of that movie. And then we go back to the kids' movies in 95, where to me, I feel like this is like, the equivalent of like Target to Kmart, like the more powerful to the lesser than, with Babe and Gordy.
I think it's more like Target to like some local store. It's
like it's like Walmart to Dollar General kind of thing, because you have Babe, which everyone like loves Babe, but loves that damn film enough to make the sequel. And then there's Gordy. Gordy's actually not a bad movie, but it's not Babe. Both about talking pigs.
I didn't realize Gordy got released theatrically till I started researching for this list, because especially once you got into the 90s, I worked in a video store at the time, and every time a movie came out, there were tons of knockoffs or like, quick cash-ins to try and, look similar to movies that were out in theaters. Like Disney movies, whenever like, a Disney movie came out, like Aladdin, there'd be like 5 animated versions of Aladdin would come out from these little shitty studios with really bad animation. I thought Gordy was a quick cash-in thing. I didn't realize it came out in a theater. I'm like,
Gordy have a bow tie?
I never saw the movie. I can picture the cover of the VHS.
Yeah, and I think he has a bow tie. I mean, obviously, if he does, I'm posting the picture of it right there. But yeah, they came out 84 days apart. That one's a definite, like, well, once again, a talking pig movie that has to have been studio red script, wanted to do another movie just like it. Just like in 1995 and 96, they were 280 days apart. The dramatic, and I say that too loosely, the dramatic stripper movies with Showgirls and Striptease, where I think Showgirls was like, let's be raw and crazy, and the Striptease is like, let's be Oscar baity, but it didn't get the Oscar baity attention that it wanted.
I don't think Striptease was Oscar baity.
I think Demi Moore did that because she thought she was going to get prestige from it.
I think Demi Moore did it because, if I'm not mistaken, at that time, what she got for that movie was the highest a woman had ever been paid for a movie. If I recall correctly. I may be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I remember she get paid a ton of money just because she's getting naked on it.
Yeah, neither one of those movies.
Yeah, we don't need to say anything more about that. I did see those movies, by the way.
They're funny to watch. They're not good to watch.
I remember going out in a blizzard to see Showgirls on opening night. And there was about 10 guys in the theater, and like nobody made eye contact. Anyway.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Next is, to me, I think, probably one of two movies, or two twin movies that I actually, and there's a couple others. I actually really enjoy both these films. I love them both equally. I don't know if I necessarily have one over the other. I had to choose which one I want to watch. I know which one I'll pick, but I love watching both these films. And that was in 1997. They were 77 days apart. You had the Volcano natural disaster films, Dante's Peak and Volcano. Both, like I said, random. They decided, we're going to make Volcano movies. And I really like both these films. Do you have a preference between one or the other?
No, I used to think I liked Dante's Peak better. I rewatched them both this past year, and it's kind of gone down a little bit on rewatch. They're both still decent. Neither of them's great.
I haven't watched
I would say
Dante's Peak.
Volcano's more fun.
Yeah, I haven't watched Dante's Peak in a long time, but I remember I remember fondly liking both films. I think Volcano was on TV like last year at one point. I caught like the last like 30 minutes of it. But I mean, it's, you know, you got Tommy Lee Jones and Pierce Brosnan. Isn't Linda Hamilton in Dante's Peak? Yeah.
She's like the mayor of the town.
And the late Anne Hayes, she's in Volcano. I enjoyed both those movies. That's, I think, the first grouping outside of like Rookie of the Year and Little Big League where it's like, I like both these films. And I think this is one of those situations as well, is that Dante's Peak, actually no, Dante's Peak made more money. I was going to say Volcano probably got the more recognition, but Dante's Peak to me is probably the better put together film, but Volcano's more fun. But Dante actually made more money than Volcano did. But Volcano had a higher.
I think this might be a case of it, now. This has not been consistent throughout the whole thing, but I think a lot of times, quality being equal, the first one I think tends to make more money because by the time you get the second one, people are like, oh, I already saw that. You know,
that's true. That's true.
Now that's how it's case. Like if the second movie is a better movie, or if it's got bigger stars, things like that, that changes everything. But if everything else is equal, I think the second one tends to make a little less.
And they were less than 3 months apart from each other. So yeah, it was really, really tight. Next one, I haven't seen either one of these movies.
Yeah, 7 years in Tibet and Martin Scorsese's Kundun were 76 days apart. This is 1997, both about the Dalai Lama. This is another one of those where I might have seen 7 years in Tibet. I don't know. But I don't know much about either movie, but just a strange subject for them both to come out within like 2-3 months of each other.
And then we probably have the
primary example.
Yeah. The most well-known, the most popular example, the most Exhibit A example of twin sister films, and that's in 1998 with Deep Impact and Armageddon. I think, and this is once again kind of like Dante's Peak, Volcano. Armageddon is the more flashy, fun, exciting, and Dante's Peak is the more serious, dramatic version of the film.
It's popcorn action versus drama. Yeah,
exactly. And obviously, like I say, in terms of the films, Deep Impact had the higher Rotten Tomato score, but Armageddon made the more money. And if you have, I think with most people, if you say, "Oh, you remember that movie back in the late 90s about the asteroids?" Probably 90% of everyone's going to say Armageddon, and then 10% will be like, "Oh, you mean Deep Impact?" And like I said, both are really solid films. But even for me, as a young age, I remember not liking or enjoying Deep Impact and loving the shit out of Armageddon, which I think now, like, I'm probably more okay with Deep Impact now as I'm an adult, but I'm still going to watch Armageddon 9 times out of 10 because it's fucking Armageddon. It's Armageddon. I mean, let's be real here. And then also in 1998, this is probably the best year. I'd say this is probably the best year of twins because I think all 3 instances of this year, all 3 were good movies for the twin sister thing. Also in 98, you have the reality show craze, which, like you said, trying to jump into the prevalent time of stuff. Reality TV was really starting to kick off, and you have the Truman Show and Ed TV. I enjoy both movies. I actually think enjoyability-wise, I actually like Ed TV more, but Truman Show is probably
Ed TV. I think is a lighter comedy. Truman Show is still definitely a comedy, but Ed TV is. I mean, they're different styles of comedy.
I just every time I think of Ed TV, I just immediately see Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson doing the chicken dance kind of thing. But yeah, Truman Show, literally, and even though I don't quote it correctly, I know I don't. We literally end every episode with a Truman Show quote. But yeah, both of those. I mean, Truman Show destroyed Ed TV in both box office and Rotten Tomato. But like I said, I enjoy both those films.
I do want to take this moment to acknowledge that we do say it differently on purpose.
Yes,
I believe the backstory I heard was he said it wrong once and decided, hey, I like that, and so let's keep it that way. That way it's our own thing.
I said it wrong once, and I was like, screw it. That's our thing. We're going to keep it that way. I like it that way.
Nobody needs to say anything. We already know, but it's intentional.
We've been doing it. I've been doing it for over 3 years. Trust me. I know the quote.
Yeah.
And then, of course, also at the end of the year, we had the Pixar craze. Everyone was trying to get on the Pixar craze, and Bug's Life was the the second movie after Toy Story, but was it DreamWorks? DreamWorks is Ants, right?
DreamWorks Ants was their very first animated film.
Yeah, DreamWorks was like, we're gonna beat them to the punch with Ants.
Well, and here's the thing: is most people didn't know DreamWorks existed. Most people didn't know DreamWorks because it was going to have an animation department. So the fact that when Ants came out, I think a lot of people went to see it thinking it was Bugs Life. Honestly,
but it definitely, they got the same Rotten Tomato score.
They have the exact same Rotten Tomato
score. Bugs
Life
killed it in the box office.
Yeah,
but yeah, you had your animated Bugs movie. I honestly don't really have a preference between these two. I guess
I'm not a fan of Ants. I think it's okay. Bugs Life I liked when it first came out because Pixar was new. I loved everything they were doing because it was new, it was different, it was fresh. Now when I look back at Bugs Life, I'm like, it's fine.
I think Ants tried to be, I don't want to say it went too adult, but it tried to go a little more serious at the end of the film, and I just didn't think it worked.
Honestly, I think that this kind of era, this is getting on a little bit of a tangent.
Well, we're ending the 90s now, but yeah.
Right. But with Ants, it kind of started with Robin Williams in Aladdin, but then with Toy Story and then Ants kind of became the era of let's fill all our animated films with the biggest voice actors, the biggest known stars. Where it used to be who was the best voice for a role. Now it was like, let's just put in star casts. And so Ants had obviously the bigger, if you look at the names, Ants had the way bigger names on it.
It definitely did. Whereas Bugs Life, I don't even know if they really had any big names in Bugs Life.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus. Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall was the star of it. Then you had some supporting people like Dennis Leary and Wallace Shawn in that, but
yeah, Ants had like everybody. I was like, why are we wasting all this talent on Ants?
Yeah.
And then ending the 90s, we have The Haunting and House on Haunted Hill, which both are mediocre to bad. But if I have to watch one, I'm watching The Haunting because of Catherine Zeta-Jones.
I was so excited for these movies coming out because I love I say this, I love haunted house movies. I don't know if I've ever seen a really good haunted house movie, honestly. I mean, and I don't mean like the like the Dr. Sleep kind of thing where there's a haunted hotel involved in it.
Or The Conjuring, which is
just about an actual haunted house.
Yeah.
And both these I was so excited for, obviously, because of the cast of both of them, honestly, because the Haunting has the bigger cast, Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, things like that.
A young Owen Wilson who's still a nobody at this point.
Mm-hmm. House on Haunted Hill had a cast of not as well known. I mean, not superstars. It was like, what was it, like Taye Diggs and Bridget Wilson and people like this. And I really wanted to like that one as well. And I didn't really love either one of them. They're both watchable, but I don't love either one of them.
Yeah, I think The Haunting was like, we want to make a scary movie, but we still want to be able to. I don't think it's rated R. Is it rated R, Haunting?
No, it's 13.
Yeah, it's like, but they want to make a haunted house movie. They still want to make it available for everybody else. Where Haunting of Hill or The House on Haunted Hill was like, no, we're making an R-rated haunted house movie.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So
I went back and watched the original Haunting, which people say is one of the best, scariest movies. That movie's a bore. So I'll still take this one over the old one.
Shocker, an old movie is a bore. And then to go into the 2000s, it was the Mars year where we had Mission to Mars and then Red Planet. I saw neither one of these.
I saw them both. Mission to Mars I found kind of boring. Red Planet I actually quite enjoy. I think a lot of people have never heard of or have overlooked Red Planet. It's got Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Carrie-Anne Moss was coming fresh off of The Matrix at that point. I actually quite enjoyed it. I think that one of them was trying to be, that's the case. Mission to Mars is more of a drama. Red Planet was an action thriller, essentially, because the main plot of it was actually this robot that basically starts trying to kill everybody in the crew. So, yeah.
And then this one, Brian, I still are not in agreement on this one. I don't think this is one. Brian 100% thinks this is one. And that's in 2003, 2004. This is also probably the furthest apart.
It's the widest gap, but it's because one was pushed back to try and get away from the other one.
And that is Finding Nemo and Shark Tale. I don't think that these are brother-sister movies, but Brian's like, they are 100% brother-sister movies.
Well, here's the thing is if we want to be strict about the definition of it, then half of this list deserves to go away. But I mean, any of these movies, like you break them down to a simple log line, like this one is going to be like this animated family comedy about underwater sea life and talking fishes and things like that. It's absolutely the same thing. Now, there are very much differences in the story, but if you go back and look at half of this list, you're going to have that as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think if we had to choose, we're all picking Finding Nemo as the better
Finding
film. I think that's also the biggest box office difference as well. 220 million. Is that the largest? I think that's the largest.
I think so. Yeah.
It's not the largest Rotten Tomato difference, but it's definitely the largest money difference. Then you have the President's Daughter movies, where you have Chasing Liberty and then First Daughter with Katie Holmes. They're about 259 days apart. I didn't see either one, which is weird because I think Mandy Moore is attractive. And
this is one of those that has to be like a script went around town and they just both made their own version of the story because they're too similar to be, because they're both about, the daughter wants to it feels like basically in prison, the house wants to get out and live their life, and they meet a boyfriend and fall in love and blah, blah, blah. But yeah.
This one I think is, and we tried to keep these off the list, the ones that's like, oh, let's capitalize on the success of this other one. But they're still within a year of each other, and that is Madagascar and The Wild. Obviously, they're both animated films about New York City Zoo animals, and the leads are both the lion, and and it's all this kind of stuff. I honestly think The Wild was made rather quickly to try to capitalize on the Madagascar stuff.
But here's the thing: is you can't make a computer animated film and of that quality. So it wasn't horrible quality. In a year's time, in less than a year's time.
Yeah, so no, it's rather close timing.
It can't have been a cash in, but it's just there's something wrong with that.
It just you can clearly see that The Wild is the how we said it, the Walmart to Dollar General situation.
It was not a terrible movie, but yeah,
it's not even that bad. But it's just like this is one of when that came out. I was like, didn't we just get Madagascar?
Yeah,
which I am not a fan of the Madagascar films. I've never liked those movies. But next, I think we both love the one film, and I've never seen the other one, and that's in 2005. We've got Sky High and Zoom. I don't know what Zoom is.
Zoom is Tim Allen, Kate Mara.
Okay,
I don't remember who else is in it. Yeah. Sky High, honestly, I am completely ambivalent about, except for the fact that it has Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it. So
it's also got freaking Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, it's kind of a mediocre movie though. Kelly Preston too,
and Kurt Russell. I like Sky High. I part of me says I've seen Zoom, but I don't remember Zoom at all. And that's out of order. So we're gonna go to the next one. And then there was it's been 5 years. It's okay to make these films. You got World Trade Center and United 93. Both came out in 2006. Apparently, like I said, 5 years is a long enough time away from the tragedy to start making money off of it. I never saw either one of these. Even though World Trade Center had Nick Cage in it, I still never saw either one of these films. Did you see either one of these movies?
I did, and obviously they're both completely different aspects of it. One's World Trade Center, one's that takes place on the flight that crashed, the one that crashed in the field. But they're obviously both about the same day, about the same sequence of events. I absolutely believe you're right that it was like, okay, 5-year anniversary, now we can do it, and it won't seem like we're being insensitive, things like that. It almost seems like we're celebrating it or whatever. Not celebrating, wrong word, commemorating it. So I saw them both. I thought they were both okay, whatever it is. You did skip one, by the way.
Well, that's 2016. That's why I said it's out of order.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. When I sorted the list, that got messed up. Sorry.
I was like, I'm skipping that. Yep. Next this is one of those. This one is the prime example of why I'm worried about Woman King not getting recognition as it deserves, because you've got both these movies are great films. I love both these films, but I do think the lesser known film is technically the better movie, and that's in 2006. They were 63 days apart. You have The Illusionist with Edward Norton and Jessica Biel and Paul Giamatti, and you have Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. Once again, great cast: Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Scarlett Johansson, Andy Serkis. The list goes on and on. I love both these films, and probably up until I think rewatching The Prestige a year or two ago, I was championing the hell out of The Illusionist as being the better film. I thought it was better acted. I thought it was well done. I thought it was a great story. I didn't care for The Prestige when I was younger. I think I like it more now than I did back then. But this is one of those movies where I feel like because of how close they were and how similar they were, the better film, a lot of people probably never saw, which was The Illusionist. What were your thoughts on that?
The Illusionist I saw once when it first came out. I think I thought it was fine. I did not especially love it. Edward Norton was in this period where he was doing a lot of serious roles and taking himself too seriously, and he's fine, but I'm not a big fan of him in a lot of things. The Prestige, I like. I think it is really overrated. People praise this like,
oh, it is
one of the greatest movies of all time, just because Christopher Nolan, so it must be perfect. It's enjoyable. I don't love it though.
It's a good movie. I don't think
Yeah.
it's like Inception is 1,000 times better than The Prestige, in my opinion. But I mean, it's still a really good film. And then back in 2006, we go back to kids movies, which I actually like the lesser version better than the more popular version, with Happy Feet and Surf's Up. I get Happy Feet is the musical penguins and it looks great and all that stuff, but I think Surf's Up is so much more fun, and I enjoy that one better. It could be because I actually do like Shia LaBeouf, but I like Surf's Up 1,000 times more.
I think Surf's Up is definitely the more fun movie. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's just okay. But Happy Feet, I don't get it. I mean, I'm not impressed by the story. I'm not impressed by the animation, and I'm impressed by the music, and just kind of like,
I was bored.
Didn't hit for me. Yeah, it was boring, largely boring. Yeah.
Whereas the Surf's Up, I actually had fun watching that movie. But I guarantee you, if you bring up the Penguin movie back in 2006, everyone's going to go Happy Feet. Whereas Brian and I would probably go Surf's Up, and everyone's like, no, the dancing one. Oh,
yeah, that might be the second biggest box office disparity too.
I think it is too. Yeah. Next, we have one that is also probably the furthest apart. And this one, I think we did break the 18-month window for, but they were just too close and similar. And I think this one also was very much a capitalizing of the, or did this one get pushed back, and that's why?
I believe this one got pushed back because I think that I remember because Mr. and Mrs. Smith had come out, and then there was kind of a lot of not copycats exactly, but very similar theme movies coming out. These two both, I think, were both planned to come out the same year, and then one got bumped back. I don't know if it was because of that or if it was like studio issues, like somebody went bankrupt or something like that. But yeah. I remember when I put them on this list, it's because they were scheduled to come out closer together.
Gotcha. Which we're talking about Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz's Night and Day, and then Ashton Kutcher and Katherine Heigl's Killers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now they're 827 days apart, but they were, like Brian said, they were supposed to come out around the same time, and then Killers got pushed back. I remember when Killers came out, that was my first thought process. I was like, so basically this is a copycat of Night and Day. I didn't even think about Mr. and Mrs. Smith. My brain immediately went to, this is basically Night and Day. And I mean, it's not, but it really is close. Honestly, Killers is probably more Mr. and Mrs. Smith than it is Night and Day. But my brain immediately went to, yeah, it's a Night and Day ripoff. And then there's these ones. I don't care for either one of these fucking films. And we actually talked about one of these as a stinker movie in the Weekend Crusaders. And that is the Mall Cop movies. In 2009, we had Paul Blart Mall Cop and Observe and Report. I hated Observe and Report. I wanted to like that, and I hated that movie so damn much. And Paul Blart is, if you like Kevin James, then maybe you'll like Paul Blart, but that movie's so bad.
I don't like either one. I think Observe and Report's trying to go for a darker
Black
brand of comedy
kind of thing, yeah.
But I don't like either one, honestly. They're
both trash. But then we got, I think this is one that Brian actually likes both movies for.
Absolutely do.
Which is the rebelling renegade action groups with the Losers and A-Team, which was 49 days apart.
Yeah, Losers and the A-Team, both existing IPs. Now, I think A-Team existed in the 80s long before the Losers comic book came out. So I don't know if they modeled it after the A-Team or not, but it's both a group of basically ex-military who basically become mercenaries because they've been wrongly accused of some crime, and so they're kind of on the run, or at least on the outskirts of the law, and trying to keep a low profile and things. But in both of these cases, it's them trying to clear their names as well as, stop the bad guys kind of thing. Both action comedies, very similar in their basic themes. I love both of these movies, though. I really do. I think both of them have such great ensemble casts to them, too.
They do have both great casts. I think I probably prefer A-Team, But I do think both movies are solid films overall.
I think I prefer A-Team, except for that stupid, like, when the tank is falling and they stop it by shooting at the ground.
That is a pretty stupid
That doesn't work. I'm sorry.
That does seem like something that would have happened in The Losers and not A-Team.
It does, honestly. Yeah, it does.
Such a Losers thing. In 2010, going into 2011, we did have... Now, granted, we know there's a lot of alien films. We know there's a lot of alien invasion films. But this one did seem a little too similar to one another. And that is Skyline and Battle Los Angeles. Now, I personally haven't seen either one. I've always meant to see Battle Los Angeles, and I just never got around to it.
I have seen them both, and I think this is one of the things about these twin movies, is what makes them feel like twin movies, as opposed to just there's lots of alien movies, is I think if the trailers are out at the same time, or if one movie is out and there's trailers for the next one coming out, which was absolutely the case here, because you go see this and you're like, oh, it's aliens and they're invading Los Angeles, and like, wait, isn't that the movie we're watching? Now, in this case, one is as kind of the military battle on the ground, obviously with Battle Los Angeles, with Aaron Eckhart and some other people. Michelle Rodriguez, I think, is in there. Skyline has really no notable cast. There's people you recognize. The one guy's name is just escaping me at the moment. But it's more like the sci-fi, almost like a horror movie kind of thing, which actually has spawned 2 sequels, which I think both went direct to video, but they're actually not terrible, I gotta say. I think both movies are decent. Neither one is great.
Yeah, and then in 2011, I still have not seen the second one of these. You had the Friends with Benefits craze with No Strings Attached and Friends with Benefits. I saw Friends with Benefits, I think, for our Valentine's Day episode, but I still have not seen No Strings Attached.
Yeah, this is one of those, I think, just on a trend. Not that no one's ever been, Friends with Benefits in the past, but kind of the term kind of came to the forefront, I think, a lot because of, like, that's when social media started really breaking out, things like that.
Yeah.
Friends with Benefits. I actually really enjoy Friends with Benefits. I think Justin Timberlake is an underrated actor, both dramatically and comedically.
I 100% agree.
Plus, you had Mila Kunis, you had Woody Harrelson's in there, some other people.
Woody Harrelson is not unintentionally, but he's so under the radar, hilarious in that film.
Yeah. No Strings Attached. Definitely the lesser movie. Ashton Kutcher. I don't hate Ashton Kutcher the way some people do. I think he's fine. But you have Natalie Portman looking beautiful and doing a lighter role, which she is not. She basically does a lot of dramas, things like that, especially this farther into her career. So to see her just do something light and fun was a lot of fun. Plus, she just looked gorgeous. You had Kevin Kline was in there, who he rarely makes some good appearances anymore. He was Ashton Kutcher's dad in that movie. It's not a great movie. It's definitely the inferior one, but it has its points worth watching.
I need to see that one just for Kevin Kline and Natalie Portman alone. And I don't hate Ashton Kutcher either. I'm actually in the process of rewatching that 70s show and just watching how hilarious he is on that show. Next you have, this is another one where I don't necessarily agree, but I gave Brian it because it have similar plots. And that is the Raid and Dread. Take this one away, because besides it being in a hotel or apartment complex, they're
both action movies with basically the police force is basically raiding this hotel or apartment complex to try and get to the drug kingpin, who's at the crime kingpin's at the top floor, and they're fighting their way up floor by floor. And it's like the whole movie basically takes place in the setting of, it's almost like a video game, working your way up to the next level till you meet the boss at the top. And in that respect, while they have, one's more futuristic, one is actually a foreign film, it's Indonesian, things like that. They're absolutely the same basic plot to it. And so it's the kind of thing where it's like, I could see people getting confused, like, wait, didn't we see this kind of movie before? But I actually very much enjoy both of these movies.
Gotcha. I like both the movies too. I think I rewatched Dread a couple months back, and because I remember going, like, everyone's like, Dread. I'm like, I remember watching it when it came out. I was not like crazy about it. Like, I still prefer the Stallone Judge Dredd, and then I watched Dredd. I enjoy Judge Dredd. I enjoy Judge Dredd. I love Stallone and Snyder together, and I love
Diane Lane's in that one, I'll give you that.
Diane Lane is in that one, but oh god, who was his brother, who was the bad guy? I'm blanking on the actor's name.
Armand Asante?
Yes. Law? I am law. I love the delivery of that line. But in 2012, we've got the Snow White craze, which was really, I think, kind of the start of Disney starting to do the live action remakes. Not that either one of these really is that. I guess Mirror Mirror technically is they're not calling it Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Well, neither one's put out by Disney though.
Yeah, but you got Mirror Mirror, and then you got Snow White and the Huntsman. I have not seen Mirror Mirror, but I hate Snow White and the Huntsman. I hate that film so much. And I remember, like, if I was doing the show back then, I would have had a lengthy, just verbal bashing of this movie if I had done the review for it. Because I despise that movie so much.
So here's the thing with these is, like, obviously Snow White is not a Disney original property. It's an old fairy tale that they adopted into the most famous version is the Disney version. So for whatever reason, two different versions of it came out the same year. Snow White and the Huntsman. Obviously they got Chris Hemsworth coming off of Thor. This time he's got an axe. Didn't know, I guess later on that he would have an axe as Thor. Kristen Stewart, who's
still coming off of Twilight.
She's had a couple acting performances I've liked, but generally speaking, I'm not a fan of her because she's just not a great actress, especially trying to emote at all. I didn't hate this movie though. I mean, I thought it looked good. I thought there were parts about it I liked. I liked all the guys that got to play the dwarves. Everybody from Nick Frost to the final role, I believe, of oh my gosh, Eddie Valiant from Roger Rabbit. I just blanked out on his name. Cannot believe this.
Bob Hoskins?
Thank you, Bob Hoskins. Oh my gosh. Some other people in there. And so I mean, I enjoyed this movie. I mean, I rewatched it recently. My rating went down like a little bit, but I still enjoyed it.
I remember when this movie came out. I was like, basically, I think this is how the making of the film happened. We have a bunch of really cool trailer scenes that we want to put in a movie, but we don't know where these fit in a film.
You just described most movies that come out.
And they go, this is a really cool shot. This is a really cool film. Let's shoot this and look how awesome it looks. Great. What plot? I don't know. Let's make this other really cool scene. This other cool scene. And they make all these scenes. They go, cool. What movie are we going to do? You know what? Let's do Snow White. And let's get the guy from Thor. And let's get Bella from Twilight. Movie done. That is what Snow White and the Huntsman is like. A bunch of cool setup scenes that have nothing to do with the movie, but they just wanted to shoot these scenes.
I will say, I would rather see this than a live action, like direct adaptation of like the Disney version. Like they're doing now with the live action adaptation.
I'm not going to deny you on that. I agree.
I'd rather see a different take on the story than see a copycat, which is why I don't enjoy things like Disney Beauty and the Beast and things like this.
The problem is that's how you get photo whacking with Alice in Wonderland. You are literally describing Alice in Wonderland. Where
Alice in Wonderland wasn't that different a take though. Alice in Wonderland was still essentially the same story, whereas this one took like a whole different take on the story.
I don't remember what's his name? Fucking photo whacking in the.
You don't remember it in the Disney version?
Yes.
The original story though.
You photo whacked all over the place.
I'm not sure it's photo whacking, but it was definitely that same kind of tone to it.
It's like everyone's talking about what the fuck are you guys saying? Go back and watch the Crusaders talk about Alice in Wonderland. You guys will know exactly what we're talking about.
Mirror Mirror, had Julia Roberts in it. I believe Armie Hammer, I think, was in it as the prince. Was it Lily?
I think Collins? It was Lily Collins. I think it was
Snow White. I remember this movie not being especially good. It's one of those things. I think it looked good. It was directed, I think, by Tarsem, who was the guy who did like The Cell with Jennifer Lopez and Vince Vaughn, which is a horror movie that like looked cool, but it was a kind of a shit movie.
Horrible film. Yeah,
but it had very cool visuals. Like if you told him to like make some stills, it'd be beautiful. But as a movie, it wasn't good.
Next, we have the movies that are so unabashedly the same film that they were like, we're actually going to pitch it that way, and that is the White House Savior movies of Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down that came out 98 days apart. And it was almost like when you're dating like this ugly girl and you just like, I'm just gonna show her off. I don't care what y'all say. I like her. And that's what these movies are like. They're like, we don't care if we're similar. You're gonna watch them both because you like the cast for both these films. They're both action heavy. They're both surrounding America and the White House. Go watch both these films. And you know what? They actually both did, I think, relatively well, box office wise. Did they not? Yeah,
there wasn't that much. I think it was like $26 million difference between them. The Rotten Tomatoes score were only 1% difference. I enjoy them both. I prefer Olympus Has Fallen just because, as I've said before, people have talked to me, I think Olympus Has Fallen for me is the real Die Hard 5. It's absolutely Die Hard. Although to be fair, White House Down has scenes and direct lines of dialogue that are direct copies from Die Hard as well. So, but they're very similar. But I do.
And Olympus Has Fallen has spawned 2 sequels, and White House Down has not spawned any. But yeah, no, I like both the movies. I think they're both good.
Yeah.
White House Down does let Jamie Foxx like, let's make Jamie Foxx president, and then he's like goes full Jamie Foxx. I'm like, the president wouldn't be like that. Come on, Jamie. At least with Olympus Has Fallen, was it Morgan Freeman or was it Eckhart? Who was the president in Olympus? Was it Eckhart?
Olympus Has Fallen?
Yeah.
Eckhart's the president. Morgan Freeman takes over as the acting president when everything goes down because he's the Speaker of the House at the time.
That's right.
By the time you hit Olympus, Angel Has Fallen, he is president.
I was like, I couldn't remember which one was president for that.
Yeah.
Next, this one also relatively closely breaks our 18th month window, but they both are basically the same fucking films. Well, based around the same person, and that is Jobs and Steve Jobs. Once again, Ashton Kutcher pops back up again as a lead in one of these movies. I actually, which was it, Jobs or Steve Jobs that I watched? The Fassbender one. Which one's which?
Fassbender's Steve Jobs.
Okay, I watched Steve Jobs earlier this year. I still have not seen Jobs.
Yeah, so this is one. These came out over 2 years apart. But this is a case where both movies actually went into production at the same time. Because I mean, Steve Jobs passed on. When did Steve Jobs pass away? Do you remember? I don't know.
Oh, I don't pay attention to Apple stuff nearly that much.
Steve Jobs died in 2011. So of course, both
5
of them.
years.
Both of them decided, there's a certain number of years you got to wait before it seems like you're just cashing in on them. And they both wanted to make it. I think that Jobs, this Ashton Kutcher one, feels way more like the one that was kind of rushed out to cash in on it. Steve Jobs is definitely the more prestigious film, which had Danny Boyle. I believe we got some Oscar consideration in there. I don't dislike Jobs. I think it's fine. Steve Jobs, I enjoy mostly because it's written by Aaron Sorkin. It's got some good dialogue and things like that. But I also think it's a little bit the more boring of the two, honestly.
Wait, Sorkin did Steve Jobs or Jobs?
Sorkin did Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I was going to say Steve Jobs with Fassbender was basically just like 4 scenes stretched out to long dialogue moments, which is a very Sorkin thing.
Oh yeah.
Totally a very Sorkin thing. And I said I can't say whether or not I like one over the other because I never saw Jobs, but I did watch Steve Jobs earlier this year. And Fassbender was great in it. And he was, but Fassbender's usually great in everything he does.
Mm-hmm.
Next, this is the one that I actually had to fight for. I've been saying Brian fought for this one. Like I fought for this one because they are literally too similar. They are 56 days apart, and that is the doppelganger movies. You have The Double, which was that was the Eisenberg one, right? Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg basically playing 2 versions of himself, and then there was Enemy, done by Denis Villeneuve before he was huge, and it was Jake Gyllenhaal playing 2 versions of himself. I have not seen either one of these, but the plot of you basically finding your same doppelganger and having being within 2 months of each other. I mean, come on, this is totally a twin sister movie. It is.
Yeah, I think the reason I wouldn't say I fought him against it. I was like, fine, I'll let you have this one, but it's not one I would have put on the list, is because a lot of people have not seen either one of them. A lot more people have not seen The Double. I mean, both of them made under $1 million. The Double made $200,000 total. I think it only got released in a couple theaters at all. But it's just a matter of just because people hadn't heard them was the only reason I wanted to keep it off. I have not seen The Double, and I don't really remember The Enemy. So
yeah, I wanted to see Enemy, and I think it was one of those things like it just wasn't available for me where I was, so I wasn't able to see it. But I totally would watch Jake Gyllenhaal act against Jake Gyllenhaal. That just sounds perfect. The only thing that would have made it better, but they weren't. It wasn't a doppelganger. Was if Legend came out the same time with Tom Hardy, but he was playing brothers, so it's different. But yeah. Then of course, like I said, like I mentioned earlier in the show, you got Jungle Book and Mowgli. They were relatively almost 3 years apart. They're about 2.5 years apart, but like you said, they were being made at the same time. Mowgli got pushed fucking all the way back.
Yeah, they were going to be both put out actually in 2016. And then Mowgli had started having production delays. So it got pushed back like maybe to 2017. And then it became, well, we need to get more space because Jungle Book was such a hit they didn't want to see if we could cash in. So like, we'll push it back a little farther. And then they sold it off to, was it Netflix, I think?
Yeah, it was Netflix.
So it ended up going straight to Netflix. So it
And
ended up coming out,
has
3 years
Mowgli
later.
has a star cast. I think it was Circus's directorial debut. I think like Christian Bale and was it Kate Blanchett? Like, weren't they all in the cast to voice the creatures?
Yeah,
Or the
yeah.
animals?
And it was, I honestly don't remember a whole lot about it. I don't know if I finished it. I remember I was not enjoying it.
It was one of those things, like, I was excited to see that, mainly because I wanted to see Aaron Circus direct. And then, like, it went away. And then it was like, oh, it got dumped on Netflix, and I never watched it.
Yeah.
You know, but then I saw Andy Serkis direct Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and I was like, okay, I'm good. Because, yeah, that wasn't a good movie either. Then you have, shockingly, I'm surprised they took as long as they did to do this, but you basically had the female hangover movies with Rough Night and Girls Trip. I have not seen either one of these movies. You've seen one.
I've seen both of them.
Right? Yeah, you've seen both.
I've seen both of them.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel the same about both of them in that they both have some laughs. Girls Trip has been hugely praised. I don't know why. I think it does have some laughs. I do not love the film, but then again, I'm probably not their target demographic for it. Rough Night has another great cast to it. Got Scarlett Johansson. You have I don't even remember the rest.
Was it Jillian? Isn't Jillian? What's her last
Bell?
name? Yeah, isn't she in it?
I don't recall. I'm pretty sure. But it's another one that's a great cast. It's definitely a female kind of hangover feel to it. Again, has some laughs. Didn't love it. This one, I think a lot of people didn't love, but I just don't understand why people did love Girls Trip then, because they're the same movie essentially.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you keep going to the next one because I've seen one, I've not seen the other, and I
kind of
pushed back a little on this one.
Well, because this is one I kind of wanted to add, but with a footnote, kind of like you said, you wanted to mention certain ones.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Christopher Robin and Christopher Robin both came out in the same year, or within a year of each other. They actually are very different stories. One of them is the character of Christopher Robin and how he grows up and forgets about or leaves. Honestly, I've not seen either one myself.
I've seen Christopher Robin. It's fine. I have super big issues with that movie. I shot the review for it. It's on the channels.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and them, their characters in the movie. Like, this is about Christopher Robin and his relationship with them. The other one is about actually the author of Winnie the Pooh and his relationship with his son, and about basically the writing of the stories for his son, that kind of thing. That stars Donald Gleason, if I'm not mistaken. And this is one where they're very different stories, but it's just one of those weird coincidences that they're both like about the same author, the same character stories. Both came out within a year of each other, but have nothing to do with each other.
Scratch that. I just looked at the release of Christopher Robin. I did not shoot a review for that because I didn't start shooting for this channel until 3 months later. Anyway, Christopher Robin, the Pooh stuff's great. The Christopher Robin stuff is stupid. And I've never disliked what's her name? What's Agent Carter's name?
Haley Atwell?
I've never disliked Haley Atwell more than in this movie.
Is she supposed to be dislikable, or?
She's not. She's his wife, but she's so the general plot real quick for Brian and for anyone who has not seen Christopher Robin. So he's grown up. He's married. Ewan McGregor. He's married Haley Atwell. They have a kid, and he works at this briefcase warehouse. And basically, his boss comes to him and goes, "You need to fix the fucking budget, or I'm gonna fire 30 people." Which is back in the 20s or 30s, whatever, which would effectively kill them. And Ewan McGregor is supposed to take him and his wife and his daughter to their cottage for the weekend. And he's like, I can't go. I have to work because I have to figure this out. Because if I don't do it, 30 people are going to lose their jobs. And she's so you don't care about your family. And all you care about is work. And I'm just like, bitch, if I don't do this, 30 people are going to lose their jobs. This is not oh, I got to work, ho-hum. No, if I don't, literally 30 people's lives rest on me to figure this out. And she's just so no, fuck that. And I was like, dude, fuck you. Fuck you. And then Pooh shows up and kind of distracts him.
Fuck you.
Exactly. And then there's one point where he literally gets angry at Pooh and calls Pooh stupid. And I was like, Christopher Robin would never call Pooh stupid or an idiot. And I was just like, no, this is. And then the third act goes super bonkers crazy with the kid. It's got good elements, but I was annoyed as fuck watching that
Oh, so this is what leads into the sequel of Blood and Honey, where Pooh comes back and kills
Exactly.
everybody.
That's exactly right. Which, if anyone's not seen the trailer for Blood and Honey, check that shit out. That's all we're gonna say about it. But yeah, that movie really irked me the whole way. Well, I remember watching that movie just going, just getting a more.
I can see Sean doing that. Sean does that once.
I do. Like Brian see me when we watch sneaker films, and I just start getting very like. And that one was because the animation for Pooh and all them are great, and they're great. But it's literally the adult element of Robin and everything. It's like, drove me insane.
The next one actually is one I push back on because one of them I had never heard of, and I think 99% of the people in the world have never heard of.
Yes, I fought for this one, even though I've never seen the other one. We got Quiet Place, and then 407 days later, we have The Silence, which was released on Netflix. Both have to do with alien creatures that are based off of sound. That's it.
I mean, it feels like a copycat cash-in to me, though.
But it's like you said, it's 400 days, and it's within that time frame. So like you can't say that to me when I said that was like.
But this is a Netflix movie. It was not something made big budget. It was not involving computer animation. It's that I mean, but it has a decent cast. It's Stanley Tucci and some other people.
Yeah, it's got Stanley Tucci in it and stuff. Like it's not like it's a.
I absolutely admit, I think they have very similar plots. And we obviously don't know the production stories behind these. This one just feels like a Netflix.
And I still haven't seen it, so I can't defend it as hard as I probably would want to defend it. But when both monsters are basically hunting people by sound, and that's literally the equivalent of A Quiet Place, like that's it. Like they're similar in that case. Next, we go back to the animated. Situation where we have Smallfoot and Abominable. Oh, Jesus.
Abominable.
It's all about your abs. It's Abominable. I want to say and I also kind of said Missing Link should also be a part of this as well as like a third.
Yeah, that's more of a Sasquatch than a Yeti, but it's still a very similar.
Yeah,
movie.
they're all similar, but I did not see Smallfoot. I did see Missing Link and Abominable, and I think Abominable was one of my surprise hits of that year. I actually thought Abominable was actually a great, charming film. And Missing Link was fine. I never saw Smallfoot. Did you see either one? I don't think you saw any of these, have you?
I saw Missing Link, which was I didn't want to. I ended up watching it actually for trivia. Yeah, and it was actually better than I expected. I mean, it's like animation. So, I mean, if nothing else, their stories, they're kind of like I think it's like Pixar in that I think that they have great stories to them. I'm not a fan of some of the animation styles that Leica does. It works in times for me like Paranorman and Kubo. Other times it doesn't work so much. This one, it wasn't bad. It was better than I expected it to be.
And then Brian has not seen either one of these. But then we had the My Son is a Drug Addict Oscar Beatty films with Beautiful Boy and Ben is Back. Both came out within 56 days of each other in 2018. Ben is Back with Lucas Hedges and Julia Roberts, and then Beautiful Boy with Timothée Chalamet and Steve Carell. I saw Beautiful Boy. I actually thought it was a really well done film. I thought the acting was superior. I had not seen Ben is Back because I literally, like I said, watched that movie not even 2 months before. And I'm not like we said on our actor thing, like we love Julia Roberts, but we don't necessarily like the movies Julia Roberts makes. And that was one of them. I was like, I don't want to watch that film.
Yeah, I had no interest in either one of these movies, despite liking some people in them. And I think, I mean, like we've said, I think that audiences confuse them. But in this case, in the case of both being Oscar baity movies, I think this hurt both their Oscar chances because I think even Oscar voters are like, wait, which is which?
Well, I do think Chalamet got nominated, but I don't think Carell.
That's a nomination, but I don't think anybody won anything.
No one won anything for him. And then, of course, like I said, it has not been completed, but this year we've got Pinocchio and Pinocchio. And that's it for what we found. Now, granted, while we were going through this, we had a list of like 100 of these, and we had to kind of like decide, do we want to count this one as one? Yes, no, or maybe we don't think that's agreeable or didn't fit into our little, quota kind of.
Yeah, it all depends on your definition of it, and also this is not a comprehensive list. Even the ones we knew applied, we're like, well, we can't talk about everything. So
exactly, we only have so much time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically it. And I will say this: once we hit from like 93 to 99, it was like there's so many of them. I would say after 2006, they did kind of stop doing that for a while. Like there was only about 4 or 5 between 2006 and 2012. So they did get away from it for a while. I'm not saying that they had original ideas, but you weren't seeing it as much. And then you started to get to like once 2012 hit, you started to get to almost like 2 a year again. Now we haven't had any as bad as in the 90s where you had like 4 or 5 of these in a year. So maybe
I think a lot of that comes down to what it is. It's come now to cost to make a movie. I think that studios, if they don't think something's going to be profitable, I think if somebody else beat them to the punch, I think they're less likely to greenlight it unless theirs is also a major project.
Well,
I think also,
and I think also because Disney owns like 3/4 of
let's
these
say there's
now.
less studios out there, honestly. There's the fact that with VOD and streaming services, they can just make a lot of stuff to go there instead. So I mean, like we did not discuss. Asylum Entertainment is the primary one. They're one of these companies that when a movie's coming out, they'll put out like a quick knockoff straight to video version of it.
Usually it's like the Fast and the Furious ones.
Yeah, well, no, it's like I remember War of the Worlds with C. Thomas Howell. I remember there's instead of Guardians of the Galaxy, it was like Defenders of the Universe or something like that, and they come out with these straight to video quick ones, and a lot of times they'll release them before the main one hits theaters because like, oh, maybe we can get people who to mistake it for the movie and they'll watch it or be interested.
You know what Asylum Entertainment reminds me of?
What's that?
It reminds me of Peter Pan in Chippendale Rescue Rangers, where he kidnaps the real versions and change. If anyone's ever seen Chippendale Rescue Rangers, which is a great film, Brian and I both loved it this year, and it won the Emmy, for TV movie. They like kidnapped like Flounder from Little Mermaid. They changed him up and then they made him make knockoff movies based on Little Mermaid, and that's what Asylum Entertainment reminds me of. It's like, oh, here comes another Transformers movie. Let's make Transfusers.
Yeah, so we didn't include all that kind of stuff. We also didn't include like things that were clearly reactions. Like after Gremlins came out, there was Critters and Ghoulies and all these other movies that were clearly just trying to copycat that.
Yeah.
And two other examples I wanted to mention. There's Phone Booth came out at the same time as Liberty Stands Still. Well, the movie Liberty Stands Still was moved to DVD because, but if you read the plots, exactly the same plot. This says Wesley Snipes and Linda Fiorentino, I think. And then when Robin Hood Prince of Thieves came out, they did the same thing with the Robin Hood movie starring Patrick Bergin. But they were both scheduled to come out in theaters at the same time. But then
there was also
went straight to VHS.
Rock had Hercules. They came out with Legend of Hercules like within like 2 years of that.
Yeah, there's lots more examples.
Yeah, there's tons. So if we didn't mention the movie that you were like, what about this? Either A, we didn't think it qualified. What's that?
Mention it down below in the comments.
Either mention it in the comments. Either we didn't think it counted, or there's just so many that we kind of narrowed it down to the ones that we think were the most, either had the most popular movie, like, oh, well, clearly everyone knows this, but maybe not know this other one, or they were both really good in the case of like, Volcano, Dante's Peak, and Deep Impact Armageddon. But yeah, I mean, that's it. Like I said, this is a show that I wanted to talk about because there's just too many of them to not talk about it. And we're kind of running out of ideas on what to talk about for the show. Except Brian did come up with a really, really cool one for October that we are definitely going to do, but I'm not going to describe what it is yet. But yeah, so if you guys have anything that you guys want us to talk about, let us know in the comments. I know this channel is growing slowly by the day, but hey, it's still growing. And so I know more people are watching these now. So feel free to chime in. Let us know what you want us to talk about, what topics, what movies. Let us know, and we might shoot those videos, and so you guys can watch them. But nonetheless, this is our episode of the Movie Crusaders chat about SisterTwin movies, or however the hell we want to say the verbiage of it. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you have to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, Brian and I will be talking about our end of summer review as well as our forecast for the rest of the year as we discuss the fall movie releases and where we think everything's going to shape up by the end of 2022. And then at the end of the month, we have our Halloween special, a show that Brian and I has had over a year in the making. We are finally going to be releasing that. If you guys ever wanted to decide, what am I going to watch this holiday season? watch that episode. We've got 62 options for you to watch during that holidays or Halloween
61.
season. Well, I wasn't going to spoil it, but yes, 61. But also, we got, like I said, reviews for Woman King. I'm going to try to see if I can see Barbarian and Pearl. If I do, there'll be reviews for those as well. Don't worry, Darlene comes out here very shortly. There'll be a review for that. We may or may not come on and do a review for the first 3 episodes of Andor. We haven't decided yet. I know people are asking me personally, because I work with people, if Brian and I are going to pop back on and talk more about Rings of Power, House of Dragon, and She-Hulk, since we've, it's been like 3 episodes since the last one. I think, Brian, if we are going to do it, would you agree, wait till end of seasons?
I think at this point, yeah, we've kind of done the intro to it. I think we'll wait to the end of the season because it's only 10, I believe.
Maybe because I feel like they're all going to end relatively close to the same time. So we might come back and do an end of the season review of all 3 of those shows. So if you guys liked the first one, where we talked about the first like 2-3 episodes of each, come back when the seasons end. We'll probably shoot a spoiler discussion for all 3 of those. But we got plenty of videos coming down the pipe. And like I said, October, we haven't fully locked down our stuff for October yet. But when we do, we will post them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So feel free to keep an eye out for all that. Till next time, I'm Sean Wasserkrug. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders. And see, it's a little different from the Truman Show.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.